The Seattle Seahawks expose some flaws in the Falcons defense, flaws the next regime must fix to take this unit to the next level.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in America, which means it's number one on the planet, which means it's number one in the galaxy. And today's Locked On Falcons is, of course, brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. Today's episode is an all 22 review, and we'll break down why things broke down for the Falcons defense in the second half and lessons that will help this team in the future, why Kyle Pitts' usage improved this week from a week ago, and what the Falcons can do more to feature him to keep this offense above water until Drake London comes back, and who's to blame for the third down struggles. But I appreciate each and every one of you that is an everydayer of this podcast. That means you make it your first listen each and every day. All you got to do to become an everydayer is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So if you don't know me, I'm your humble host, Aaron Freeman. Been watching the All 22 since 2012 on a weekly basis, and we break it down each and every day, or not each and every week, here on the podcast. So appreciate all of you guys, but let's get right into it. You know, one of the things that we saw in this game was the Falcons playing a lot of man coverage. I was very curious if the Falcons would do that. I like the choice. I like be aggressive. We talked about this with Jarvis Davis last week on the pod. Like, this is your identity. Like, don't run away from your identity. You want to man up teams. See if AJ Terrell can handle JSN and find out. And if he can't, then, so be it. But if he zoning it to death, to me, was not a good strategy. So the Falcons did come out there and do that. Now, I thought there was an interesting wrinkle early on in this game with the Falcons man coverage where they weren't truly playing a true version of cover one with one single high safety, and they weren't playing a true version of cover two man with two deep safeties, that they would basically play a variation of a hybrid cover 1.5, where basically the second safety would be shaded over to help AJ Terrell up against JSN. And they did it on 2 of the first 4 pass plays, but thereafter, I think they maybe had done it like one other time, and they played just more traditional man coverage and left AJ Terrell on an island. Now, AJ Terrell versus JSN in the first half, he did very well, right? My charting had in those matchups, most of them being man coverage, but a couple of them, they were in quarters and whatnot, or in match coverage. But, JSN against AJ Terrell had 2 catches on 4 targets for 19 yards with a 25% success rate in the first half. In the second half, that flipped. JSN had 3 catches on 3 targets for 62 yards, 2 touchdowns with a 100% success rate. And overall, the Seahawks had a much more effective were much more effective offensively in the second half, attacking the Falcons man coverage. We talked about this on the Falcons squad show earlier this week. They were utilizing rub routes, crossing routes that are really effective at attacking man coverage. It wasn't just AJ Terrell. It was the entire defense was less effective in the second half. Based off my charting in the first half, the Seahawks had 4 catches on 6 targets against man coverage for 31 yards, 1 interception, 2 sacks for a 25% success rate overall. And then in the second half, it was 4 catches, 5 targets, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, 80% success rate against the Falcons man coverage. And we also saw the Falcons dial up more blitzes in the second half of the game. They only blitzed, based on my charting, 3 times in the first half, 8 times in the second half, but it wasn't that effective. The Seahawks carved that up, right? All 3 of the Seahawks touchdowns came on blitzes when they brought pressure, and the Falcons were effective at getting pressure on non-blitzes in the first half, but not so much in the second half. Based on my charting, the Falcons had a 53% success rate in the first half, and then only not a success rate, 53% pressure rate in the first half on non-blitzes, and then only 13% in the second half. So an overall pressure rate of 39%, which is a healthy number, but obviously, that contributed. And to me, the Seahawks had answers for the blitzes. That's been something that we've talked about quite a bit since that 49ers game where, Kyle Shanahan and company basically came up with the answers, and a lot of teams, including many Kyle Shanahan proteges, including Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, have basically been like, okay, well, we'll just get the ball out quick, and that will defeat the blitz. And, we've talked about the Falcons trying to utilize more of their 4-man rush in recent weeks, and we talked about how dominant it was against the Saints, and it's come back down to earth the last couple of weeks. It's still been effective. It's not bad or anything. It's above average by league standards when you look at pressures and sacks and all that stuff, but it hasn't been dominant in the way it was in that Saints game. And then you couple that with the fact that the Falcons blitzing has been far less effective. I think on the 5-man, when they've rushed 5 or more guys over the last 3 games, including that Saints game, they are actually the lowest pressure rate in the entire NFL. According to PFF data, when, the first 11 weeks, they were like top 5 in those metrics. So, we'll see if the Falcons pass rush can continue to make strides, but like games like this to me show me that this pass rush, while it has taken a big step forward, I don't feel like it's solved the problem. I think people will look at the stats and look at, this team is on pace for 50 plus sacks this year. I think they're at like 45 or 46 at this point in time, if I'm not mistaken. And basically be like, oh, we solved the pass rush. And I don't think we have, right? And some of that's owed to the step back that the blitz has made. Some of that is owed to the fact that the 4-man rush is probably going to be due for some potential regression next year. We talked about that earlier in the week, where if you let several veterans walk like Leonard Floyd, Arnold Ebiketie, Kay Nellis, David Onyemata, that have been instrumental in the effectiveness of that 4-man rush over the last couple of games, and you let all those free agents walk in free agency, and you don't really have the resources with limited draft picks and limited spending money in free agency and salary cap space to sort of fill those voids, like this is a unit that's due for regression. Now, hopefully we're not talking like, going back to getting 25 sacks or 18 sacks or whatever. But, it is a unit that I would not, as we sit here today, expect it to, repeat of what this year in terms of sack production and pressure rate and all that sort of stuff. So, for me with the pass rush, I feel like rather than saying we've solved it, we've fixed it, it's more that we've taken a big step forward in terms of the pass rush. But like, to me, it's like the first of like 3 steps that I think the Falcons need to make long-term in order to quote unquote solve their pass rush issues, so that we're not sitting here going like, oh, and so the next time they get 50 sacks or whatever, we can sit there and say like, oh, this is what we can expect moving forward every year, right? That sort of thing, similar to what the Steelers are or have been for the last 20 years and whatnot, as a team that consistently, the Eagles are another team that consistently, ranked near the top of the league in terms of sack production. But, because of that, I think this next regime, assuming that there will be a next regime replacing Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot and all those guys, they can't make the same mistake that I think Raheem came in making, right? That Raheem came in trusting in that the Falcons under Terry Fontenot and previously under Arthur Smith had already built up most of the stuff. And I think ultimately when we talk about one of the biggest reasons for the downfall of Raheem Morris is basically his overconfidence in Terry Fontenot and the roster that he had built already, that he inherited coming into the league. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those issues later in the episode when we talk about the offense and the lack of weapons on the wide receiver core. But I feel like the next regime can't have that same approach. They can only have their approach of like, Terry Fontenot and company started to get the ball rolling, but we still have to build up the rest, rather than just sort of having that complacent resting on your laurels attitude. And that's why if and when this team, cleans house and resets, they can't bring in new people, and Arthur Blank, that owner of the Falcons, basically say, well, you have to build up the current roster, and you can't force them to have too much allegiance to the current roster as it is currently built, because while the current roster is solid, but it's not, world shattering, right? And we talked about this going into the season. A big part of this season is to find out how stocked is the cupboard, because, we weren't necessarily sold that this regime, Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, would survive this season. And so we wanted to see some of the young players get the opportunity to see how stocked this cupboard is. And I think it's clear that the cupboard has some things in it, but it isn't as stocked as I think some people would like you to believe. It's certainly not bare. It's certainly not fully stocked. It's somewhere in between. which is why you hear me talk about the mediocrity and them having talent but not being loaded with talent and all those various things. And so hopefully, Arthur Blank and company, if and when he decides to move on from the current regime, won't force the next regime to basically, well, you got to win with the current guys. And Michael Penix is a big part of that. This is why we sit here on this podcast being like, you kind of have to turn the page on Michael Penix, but that's a separate conversation from what we're having, talking about this defense. And so, rather than approaching it from, we need to tweak this thing, it's like, you kind of need to rebuild it. But I know rebuild is a bad word to a lot of folks. So we like to use the term reset this thing. And so I feel like that reset is more of a 3-year process than a 1 year and then we figured it out type of process that has been the pervasive approach that the Falcons have had for the better part of the decade, which I feel like is the number one reason why they continue to spin their wheels. But I'm sure we will continue unpacking that in the weeks and months to come here on the podcast. But let's continue talking about what the film showed for the offense in the Seahawks game. And it's going to require us to tweak slightly the Kirk Cousins chaos meter that we gave on a Sunday. And we'll also talk about, how Kyle Pitts needs to be featured a little bit more and rant a little bit about how terrible the Falcons wide receiver core is without Drake London and Kadero Hodge as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So this holiday season, as you guys are spending money to buy gifts for all your various friends, you got to find ways to save money elsewhere. And Mint Mobile is the perfect place because they're running their best deal of the year. All their unlimited plans are 50% off, which means if you sign up for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever, you get unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's a great way to save, and Mint makes it easy to switch. I made the switch this summer in July, signed up for 3 months for $15 a month. And then when we got to October, I signed up for another year, right? And I sat here and like, why didn't I make the switch sooner? And you will have the same revelation as well if you switch to Mint right now. So turn your expensive wireless present into huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint Mobile and shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees, initial plan term only. Over 35 gigabytes may slow when the network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Georgia Access. Have your health or family needs changed lately? Well, Georgia's got you covered. Georgia Access is our state's marketplace for Georgians to compare, apply, and enroll in health insurance plans that offer the best value for their individual needs. Open enrollment is happening right now. All you got to do is visit georgiaaccess.gov today. Georgia Access, health insurance for Georgia by Georgia. So guys, in addition to all you everydayers, we are unveiling the Everydayer Club across the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network on the planet. And to join the Everydayer Club, it's just $5 a month or $50 a year, and you get access to ad-free versions of Locked On Falcons. You get access to an exclusive Everydayer Club Discord server, and you also get access to a exclusive merch store, right? If you're looking at this hoodie that I'm wearing, if you're watching us on YouTube and you've seen me rock this hoodie for like 9 months now, I got it in a merch store, and you're like, I want something exactly like that or something similar like that for myself. You can get access to that by joining the Everydayer Club at the link in the description below or at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com. Again, $5 a month or $50 a year. So continuing today's all 22 breakdown, let's revisit the Kirk Cousins chaos meter. I gave Kirk a level 2 game manager rating. After watching the film, I feel like we might have to knock it down to a level 1.5, right? Level 1 is conservative Kirk, where Kirk's too conservative for his own good. There was a few too many throws where I felt like Kirk was being a little too conservative, a little too quick to check the ball down. And so I'm going to go down to a level 1.5 on the Kirk Cousins chaos meter, where he checked the ball down rather than potentially pushing the ball down the field. There were probably about 3 or 4 explosives to Darnell Mooney that were left on the field, right? That one of those includes that 30-yard touchdown that was taken away by the officials in the game. But 2 more were like, there was a whole shot early in the second quarter where Kirk checked the ball down to Kyle Pitts on a 3rd and 11. There was another one midway through the 4th quarter. That was a check down to Pitts that I think Tariq Woolen had a taunting penalty on. And that was another whole shot with the Seahawks in cover 6, quarter half coverage, where they could have had a one-on-one. That was like a 3rd and 18, and he could have pushed the ball down the field on a similar hole shot to Darnell Mooney on that particular play. But, this game sort of signaled why I think the Falcons should be running their offense through Kyle Pitts as well. Last week we complained about how they weren't giving Kyle Pitts the opportunities that he needed to in order to facilitate the offense more. And they did give him those opportunities this week. They did a better job of that. They hit him on a couple of corner routes. You had the Yankee concept, which was a 20-yard gain that they had in the first quarter, where Kyle Pitts, they hit him on a crosser. You had a dagger concept where they got a 26-yard gain early in the 3rd quarter, where they hit Kyle Pitts on a dig route. They had another explosive on a 21-yard check down to Tyler Algier. But the reason why Tyler Algier had that huge green grass to run into is because Kyle Pitts was able to draw the coverage. I think it was Nick Eman-Wari away from Algier on that check down and give him the room to run for that 21-yard gain. So I basically say you got to run your offense at this point without Drake London through Kyle Pitts. He is now your number 1 receiver. And I know Kyle Pitts is not a number 1 receiver. I know Jarvis Davis is listening to this and flipping out like Kyle Pitts is not a number 1. And Jarvis is not wrong. He's not a number 1. Under normal circumstances, he's not a number 1. But I'm looking around that receiver room and I'm like, who else is making plays, right? And Kyle Pitts is your only guy that is making explosives, that is generating plays like that. And so he's the only guy that you have a chance. And we've talked about this before, where you kind of rank the hierarchy of number 1 through number 4 wide receivers, right? A number 1, and this is true pretty much across any NFL roster offense, right? This is not exclusive to the Falcons, right? That on typical number 1 receiver is going to get 8 to 12 targets a game. A number 2 is going to get 5 to 8 targets a game. A number 3 is going to get 3 to 5 targets a game, and a number 4 is going to get 1 or 2 targets a game. And to me, David Sills, Devin Tompkins, and Dylan Drummond, who have been the Falcons, 2, 3, and 4 wide receivers after Darnell Mooney with Drake London out of the lineup, are really number 4s. Like, you should not be throwing the ball to any of these guys more than 1 or 2 times a game, right? And you got to get the ball more to the guys that are actually better than them, which is Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, and Kadero Hodge. And Pitts of that group is the closest thing that you have to a number 1, and you should be trying to find ways to scheme him open, 5, 8 or more times a game. And if you're not, I think you're really hurting your offense and holding back your offense. And then you're also seeing the Falcons dial up all these screens to the David Sills and Tompkins and Drummond in this game. Each one of those guys had at least 1 screen pass this week. And I think Tompkins had 1 last week and Sills had multiple last week and whatnot. You've heard me before talk about how, like, the Falcons are utilizing these guys in the same way that they used their former number 3 wide receiver in Ray McLeod with all the screen passes and whatnot. And it just leads me to being like, you're trying to get Ray McLeod like production with lesser players than Ray McLeod. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, the Falcons moved on, cut Ray McLeod earlier this season for unknown reasons. And then you also have one of your number 4 wide receiver from last year in Kadero Hodge, who is capable of at least doing a little bit more than 1 or 2 targets a game. He's not playing either on offense, right? He's your best blocking wide receiver outside of Drake London. And if you doubt that, go watch the Miami Dolphins game from earlier this season. He's a better separated and contested catch guy than any of these other guys in David Sills, Tompkins, and Drummond. And he was also your best screen guy. Now, he had a limited sample on screens, but he was your most productive wide receiver in terms of producing on screens last year. And so if you're going to dial up screens to your wide receivers, I don't understand why you're not doing all these things with Kadero Hodge, who also is versatile, can play in the slot, can play that Z role that David Sills has been featured in these last couple of weeks. And so I just don't get why the Falcons are doing all the things that they were doing with Hodge and McLeod last year with lesser players. Right. And you know me, guys, if you're an everyday of this podcast, you know that I typically am not the type that sits here and says, oh, you got to play this guy. The coaches should play this guy. And if they play that guy, they'll be successful. I typically give the coaches the benefit of the doubt. They're in the building every day. They're watching practice every single week. They know what they're doing, or at least they should know what they're doing. But this is one of those times where I just feel like I don't get what they're doing. And then they bring in Malik Heath at this stage in the season. And what is he going to do? Is he going to get up to speed on the roster? And meanwhile, Nick Nash and Chris Blair continue to languish on the bench, and those were 2 of your better wide receivers during the summer as well. when are they going to get their opportunities? They know the offense. So if anybody's going to contribute to you over these last 4 games, it's not going to be Malik Heath, who the Falcons scooped up off of waivers for the Packers. Who's been the number 5 or number 6 wide receiver for the Packers the last couple of years. It's going to be the guys that know the offense in Nash and Blair, right? And so this goes back to, why I'm such a hater, why I'm so skeptical all the time, particularly going back to the summer when Raheem Morris was talking that talk about how great they feel about their wide receiver depth. And, it's just like, all right, Raheem, we'll see, right? Talking that talk about Casey Washington. He's been a healthy scratch the last 3 weeks, right? And he was their next man up, right? That a lot of people believed in, we can move on from Ray McLeod because Casey Washington step up, and now he can't even get on the field, right? And this is what I've been talking about. Like, this regime loves talking that talk, and they never walk the walk. They never back it up. And so this is why every time I hear coach speak and they're like, next man up. And I'm like, all right, we'll see. I've been hearing this for 20 years. And so Raheem's not any different than any other coaching staff before, but I this is the Falcons. So they always let you down. It's just like they say a thing. I'm like, that's BS. Right? And again, I come off as a hater, and people are always like, oh, you're not a real fan and all that stuff. And I was just like, man, you haven't been hearing this BS for 20 years. And this is just another, like, I remember this stuff, guys. And so the next time coaches come along and say some stuff, and the rest of you are like, oh, this time it's going to be different. And I'm like, no, it ain't. No, it ain't. But that's why I'm the hater. That's why I'm Mr. Skepticism. And so, I told the Locked On Falcons insiders earlier this week that, after they signed Malik Heath, that there's a rant in me about the debacle that is the wide receiver position. You'll get the tip of the iceberg today on today's episode, but we'll save it probably for the year-end roster review. Maybe again, I can't make any promises because we got 4 more games left, so it might all come out eventually on the podcast. But we do the year-end positional breakdowns in January and February. Right before the Super Bowl, and we'll break down the wide receiver, and that will probably be an epic rant about how they just completely mishandled this wide receiver position. But you're getting a taste of it today, and you'll get a little bit more of it probably towards the end of today's episode as we look at the third down struggles of the Falcons, right? And we'll ask, who's to blame for the failures in this Seahawks game? How much of the blame is on the quarterback, the receivers, the blocking, or the play caller? And we'll break that down as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So, guys, this time of year, the Falcons are struggling, but you can still make a little bit of money this holiday season by heading over to FanDuel. Right now, for this Thursday night matchup between the Falcons and Bucks, the Falcons are 4.5-point underdogs against the Bucks, but FanDuel's going to make it all exciting, even if the Falcons can't make it exciting on the football field, because you can place live bets as the action unfolds from every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. So if a receiver like Kyle Pitts gets hot, you can watch those player props, go up, right? If the defense starts tightening up, you can see the spreads and money lines adjust instantly, right? And if the momentum flips after a turnover, you can make those bets on who's going to score the next touchdown coming off of that turnover. It's not going to be the Falcons if they generate a turnover, but maybe somebody for the Bucs, right? And so it keeps every snap, every drive, every possibility exciting. So check it out by heading over to FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app, and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. So looking at the Falcons' third down, they once again struggled on third downs. They've been one of the worst third down teams in the NFL this year, right? 14 third down plays in this game. One of those was nullified by penalty, so 13 technically. And they only converted one of them. It was the very first one where Bijan was able to win on a slant and then never again for the rest of the game. 0 for 12 the rest of the game. 0 for 13 technically, right? And so you just look at those 12 missed opportunities, based off of breaking down the film. 4 of them, I think, were owed to passes being broken up, 2 interceptions, both great plays by Devin Witherspoon on both of those interceptions. One was a tip pass from Boye Mafe on a Pitts screen. One was a contested catch. I believe it was Tyreek Woolen in the end zone against Dylan Drummond. There were 2 drops, one by Pitts, one by Sills. 2 questionable quarterback decisions, those Pitts checkdowns where you had Mooney open deep that I mentioned before, right? One was poor blocking on an Algier run, which was blown up by Leonard Williams. One was a fumble by Bijan. One was the officials, collaborating to take away a Darnell Mooney touchdown. And one was a poorly executed screen to Dylan Drummond. And then the one play that was nullified was a miscommunication where Kirk Cousins overthrew David Sills on a double move, but David Sills wasn't open on that particular play. And David Sills is never open on any particular So when I do the breakdown, right, I go, who's the blame when we're dividing up the blame pie, right? The biggest slice goes to the receivers. I put 3 of those on the receivers. I think 2 were just great plays by the defense. One was Devin Witherspoon on the breakup that led to the Eman Wari interception, and the other one was Boye Mafe tipping that pass on the Kyle Pitts screen because that was wide open, and Mafe got his hand on the ball. 2 were on the quarterback, those questionable decisions on the checkdowns. 2 were on the OC. Both of those were screens, right, where you had the poor executed screen to Dylan Drummond, and then what was the other screen pass? There was another screen that I was like, I hate this play call. Oh, it was the other interception to Devin Witherspoon interception where Seattle saw that screen coming a mile away, right? And so we blame the play caller because, the Falcons have been spamming screens as of late, again, without Raheem McLeod, without Terrell. Their 2 best screen guys to these lesser wide receivers, and defenses are not being fooled whatsoever on that. One was on the offensive line, although, again, Leonard Williams was able to beat 2 blockers, Jake Matthews and Charlie Warner, on that Algier stuff. One was on the running back, that was the Bijan fumble, and one was, of course, on the officials. And so clearly the Falcons miss Drake London, if it wasn't clear, right? If you were sitting here going, do the Falcons miss Drake London? Like, yeah, I think it's clear, right? But, I feel like the Falcons need to just, because they don't have good wide receivers, right? They need to hide their receivers as much as possible. They need to limit, it's like Darnell Mooney, and that's really it. And so I feel like the Falcons got to lean into the heavy personnel groupings that we've seen them do, and they did in the first half of this game. And I know they got behind in this game, and so they started dialing up more of the 3 wide receiver sets because they were playing from behind in the second half, right? But I think they've had success eliminating the wide receivers, these backup wide receivers from their offense, and leaning on 12 personnel, 13 personnel, 2-3 tight end sets. Right, I want to see more 21 personnel with both Bijan and Tyler Algier, 2 running backs on the field. 22 personnel, I think, would be something that they could utilize. It was very effective in that Colts game on a handful of plays, and we haven't seen it since then. And that gets us to more conversation about the play caller and Zach Robinson, that if and when Zach Robinson is fired at the end of the season, that's going to be a talking point that we discussed last year and has continued this year, where it does feel like so much of this offense is just kind of throwing stuff at a wall and hoping something sticks. Like the fact that, you had an effective use of this 22 personnel with 2 running backs and 2 tight ends in that Colts game, and we haven't seen it outside of that game, tells you that there's no cohesive scheme. It's just like they're just trying stuff. And we talked about that a lot last year. It's continued this year, and it's, to me, a big reason why this offense is not living up to its expectations. But, if you are going to lean on your 11 personnel, can we get your best receivers on the field? And it's funny to me because, when we were going through that time with J.D. Bertrand getting all the snaps, and everybody was like, J.D. Bertrand's the worst, and it's terrible, and he's holding back the defense, and I was just like, it's fine, And now I feel like that with the wide receiver. I understand your guys' pain with the 3 weeks of J.D. Bertrand, because now I feel that way with the Falcons wide receiver core, where it's just like, why are we doing this? This is holding back your team. Right, that contributed to the downfall of defense during those couple of games. To me, this has contributed to the downfall of the offense, where this team just has so much confidence in bad players, right? And so let's lean into the heavy personnel groupings. Let's get your best players on the field, right? I'm tired of David Sills getting all these snaps. I'm tired of Dylan Drummond and Devin Tompkins getting these snaps. Charlie Warner should be getting all them snaps. Tyler Algier should be getting all them snaps, right? In addition to Mooney and Bijan and Pitts, and right now, those are your 5 best players. And then if you're going to go to expand to a 6th guy, it should be Kadero Hodge, not any of these other bums. I'm sorry. It's just it's so funny to me because during that JD Burch was I think you guys are overreacting. It's no, you're not. You're not. I apologize, guys. I apologize if I wasn't reacting properly to the JD Bertrand terribleness. I get it now. This is how I feel about this wide receiver core. It's it's the same thing, but on the offensive side of the ball. And ultimately, when we talk about the downfall of this football team, it's stuff like this, that it's ultimately this team's overconfidence in bad players has contributed greatly to the downfall of this season. And it's funny when we talk about it specifically with the wide receivers and tight ends and whatnot. And I'm talking about, we got to lean on, 2 and 3 tight end sets and all this stuff. And it's like, we're right back to where we were with Arthur Smith, right? Arthur Smith was like, I hate 11 personnel. I hate 3 wide receiver sets. I'm not running it. We're going to get as many tight ends on the football field, as many fullbacks and running backs and all that stuff on the football field. And now it's like, please, Arthur Smith, come back. Baby, come back, and it's just like, to me, this is a testament of why, Terry Fontenot is a terrorist, right? Because we're right back here. We're right back where we were in 2023. Like, this man has not improved anything, right? It's the same situation. And like that wide receiver core with like Mac Hollins and Van Jefferson and Scotty Miller is far better than the current version of the Falcons wide receiver core without Drake London. And with Darnell Mooney falling off a cliff. And so it's just funny to me that like we're right back to where we were with where we ended with Arthur Smith. And that to me is just a testament to why they should absolutely clean house and completely reset this team, because they have not shown any progress from where they were 2 years ago in a lot of areas. And it's directly, and I appreciate you, Mike McDonald, for exposing these fools as thoroughly as you did, right? It didn't feel good in the moment, but going back and rewatching the film, that was the thing I appreciated, being like, Mike McDonald's out here just doing the Lord's work. And hopefully Arthur Blank is listening, right? And he will do the right thing at the end of the season, or at some point between now and the end of the season, and clean house with this group. So that's where that's where we are. Dark place to end the show, guys, but it is where we are. And I know a large percentage of you are nodding your heads as we speak right now. So that's going to do it for us here. We will get into an extended All 22 review for the Locked On Falcons insiders at the link in the description below at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnFalcons. That extended All 22 review will be coming their way before the Thursday night game. We'll be looking at the third down issues of Kyle Pitts' usage, the good and bad of the Falcons defense. And then after Thursday night's game, we get through this Bucs game, the insiders will get an updated in terms of my charting, in terms of the pass rush production and the coverage production this season. Our last update was after, I believe, the Colts game and whatnot. So they'll get another update, and you can hit that link in the description below. You get a 14-day free trial, right? So you can give yourself a Christmas gift for the time being, and then it's $4.99 a month after that point. And also, you'll find a link in the description to join the Everydayer Club. Again, ad-free access to Locked On Falcons, a Discord server for Everyday Club, exclusive, as well as that merch store where you can get, illustrious swag like that I'm wearing if you want Locked On merch and whatnot. $5 a month, $50 a year. You can get a free month if you're on Spotify. If Locked On Falcons is on your Spotify Wrapped, or really any Locked On show is on your Spotify Wrapped, just tag Locked On Podcast on any social media platform, and you will get a code for a free month to that Everydayer Club. So you can get, that delicious, illustrious swag, that ad-free advertising on the shows, as well as access to that Discord server. Again, that's at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com or the link in the description below. So appreciate you guys. Tomorrow we'll be back with Crossover Thursday with James Yarko of Locked On Bucs, previewing this Falcons Bucs game on Thursday night. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.